Guys, how's it going? So today I wanted to show you guys how to do some low lighting. I'm just going to show you my mouth is moving faster than my brain. Anyways, I'm just going to be showing you the technique today because it's going to be hard to see because Maria's already dark. So what I use low lighting techniques for is adding some dimension to blonde hair. A lot of times if clients get highlights and highlights and highlights and highlights, often their hair tends to look one solid color. And so I'll add some lowlights to add some dimension back into her hair. Another time I like to use this is sometimes in the winter time, our blonde clients like to go just a little bit darker. So this is really helpful for that. You can play with different tones in the hair, but I have found that warmer tones work better than ashier tones. Sometimes ashy tones can make the hair look dull and kind of drab. So you want to think about the warmer tones. I tend to use like a 7 neutral with a little bit of 7 gold, or like an 8 neutral with a little bit of 7 gold. I feel like the gold is good for like counterbalancing any color that's lacking from the hair because we lightened it. It keeps it from turning ashy or muddy. Okay, so as you can see, I've separated this top part of the head. The reason I like to do this is because I feel like dimension looks best when it's underneath. I don't necessarily like to put lowlights on the top because I feel like sometimes it looks stripy. And so I section off the top part and just put the lowlights underneath. Now I'm just going to be using a little bit of developer because that's what I got here. I've got my weaving comb and I've got my clips and I've got my foils. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you on half of the head. I won't bore you and keep you with the whole head. Okay, so what I like to do is I like my lowlights to be more concentrated underneath. Sorry, I'm doing best with my small space I got here, guys. Got a little apartment. Oh, look, there's Wally. There's Wally. He wants to say hi. Hi. Okay, so here we are. So I'm going to start in the back. And again, I'm going to create my diagonal sections. And I like to create them diagonal back. And what that means is that the slope goes to the back of the head like this. Okay, so again, you guys will learn from me, diagonal blends no matter what you're doing. Whether you're styling, whether you're braiding, whether you're updoing, or you are coloring, okay? So with a low light, what I'm gonna do, let's see, can you see? Okay, so with a low light, you wanna pick up bigger pieces. Okay, so again, remember, like we talked about on our last foiling, the closer you put your pieces, the more saturated it's going to be. So with low lights, you don't want them to dominate. So I tend to take them a little bit further apart. My foils will be about 1 inch apart. Again, continuing with my diagonal back sectioning, picking up a little bit big pieces because we're adding dimension back to the hair. Okay, one thing to remember too when you're low lighting is that this hair is already very porous. So porous hair means that cuticle layer has been opened. Blonde hair is already porous because it's been lightened. So we want to think about that this color is going to fade pretty quickly, depending on the porosity of the hair. Of course, if her hair is less porous, it won't fade out as quickly. But I always like to do my lowlights about a half a shade darker than what they want. And the reason I like to do that is because the first time that they wash their hair, those lowlights are going to fade a little bit, and that will make it perfect. I've done lowlights in the past where they disappeared when my client went home and washed their hair, and that meant I had to redo it. So time is money, and I don't like to redo things. So I've learned just to go like half a shade darker than your desired level. It may seem a little darker at first, but after that first wash, it will be perfect. Something else to keep in mind when you're low lighting hair is that we already know that this hair is porous, like we just talked about, but because of that porosity, we want to use a demi-permanent color. And the reason we use a demi-permanent color on hair that's already been previously lightened is because that cuticle layer is already open. That cuticle layer is open. If I'm using permanent hair color, that permanent hair color has ammonia and it has peroxide, which is just going to further open the cuticle that's already open. So we want to avoid that. Use demi-permanent. It's going to last you a lot longer. So people often, there's a misconception with demi-permanent color, is that people think that it's not going to last as long, but that's not the case, especially on hair that's already porous. So demi-permanent actually kind of stains the hair and actually leaves shine in the hair, and it doesn't over-process it. So demi-permanent is my best friend in the salon, and it should be yours too. So with these low lights, you can see how big those pieces are. All right, it's okay with the low lighting to make them a little bit bigger. And the reason being is because it pulls that dimension back. So when you have the more, the thicker pieces, I feel like it keeps it from looking salt and peppery, because sometimes if the pieces are too fine, it can make the hair look salt and peppery. Okay, so here I'm going to go diagonal back on my first section. So here I'm only going to have to put like 3 foils on the side here. And one thing about low lighting, less is more. And that's something that I feel like we need to remember. We're not trying to dominate, unless of course she's trying to go a little bit darker for the fall. Of course, then use more. But if she's just trying to add some dimension back to her hair, we don't need to use a lot. Okay, so I'm going to do one here. And as I get to the top here in the front, I'm going to make my pieces just a little bit smaller. That's the only place that I really need to worry about it. Hey, there we go. Okay, so I'm not going to go right on the face on this one. I'm going to go off the face. And the reason I don't like to go right on the face with low lights is because when she pulls her hair back, we don't want to see any stripes. Also, generally speaking, most blondes, which is who we do low lights on, most blondes, they prefer to have that lightness around the face. Now, some of you guys may not, I just realized some of you guys may not know what low lighting is. Low lighting is when you place darker pieces than the base. So if your client is blonde, level 7 is dark enough. If your client is a little bit darker than blonde, you may need to go a little darker. I always say at least 2 levels darker than what your client has. So here on this top one, I'm going to go a little bit of a finer weave. Okay, because again, we're moving to the top and I don't want to add a bunch of dimension to the top. All right, so that's how I do it. I want you guys to do both sides. I will save you the boring act of watching me do the other half and listening to me babble. All right, so that gives you guys an idea of how to do that. All right, so we've got 3 on the side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the back. So 5, 5, 3, and 3. And that's all we need to do. Because again, low lights, less is more. I've found that I like to leave the top out. It's just a personal preference, but your client, if she wants some on the top, by all means, do them for her. The client is in charge. I didn't want to say always right, because they're not always right, but the client is in charge. She tells us what we do. All right. Ciao.